I am having a pretty good afternoon, folks, because the Dak that smiles back is officially back. Vancouver announced earlier today that forward Dakota Joshua is indeed in tonight's lineup against the Islanders. I had to pause for a second, like, who exactly are the Canucks playing today? But yes, Dakota Joshua is indeed back, and this was indicated to us earlier in the morning when the Vancouver Canucks recalled a few more guys. Now, the thing is, they normally have been calling up and sending down and calling up and sending down guys like Artyom Baines, Erik Brannstrom. Now, earlier this morning, we saw the Vancouver Canucks recall Ratu and Jonathan Lekkerimaki. No Baines, which means that the roster spot was going to be available, which means that Dakota Joshua is officially back. Okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it happens to mean that tonight because it was already confirmed that Joshua is going to play. Now, this also is a really interesting opportunity for fantasy owners like myself. I drafted Dakota Joshua all the way back in the beginning of the season, and I have had him on my IR the entire year. It just so happens that I had a pretty good opportunity to activate Joshua because Seth Jarvis, who is also on my team, got injured in a day-to-day capacity earlier this week as well. It's been a big hit for me fantasy-wise because I'm kind of getting destroyed this week, and Seth Jarvis is an amazing player, but having that roster spot open and available for Dak, it's pretty good. And for me personally, I'm in a categories league, so having Dakota Joshua and Kiefer Sherwood both available tonight, yeah, I'm super excited for that stack on the hits column because I cannot wait to see what these two guys, hockey wrecking balls, can do out there together. Plus, with Dakota Joshua's offensive edge, too, like, if him and Sherwood can start getting it going a little bit, then that's going to be awesome. Let's go over onto Brendan Batchelor's Twitter account because he went out there and tweeted the lines. Morning skate Canucks lines. DeBrusk, Pettersson, Garland, Suter, Miller, Lekkerimaki, Heinen, Bluger, Sherwood, Joshua, Ratu, and Höglander. Hughes, Hronik, Susie Myers, Brannstrom, Desharnais, and Noah Juleson. So this seems to be the case here. We're not going to see Joshua and Garland playing together. We're going to see Joshua on the fourth line with Ratu and Höglander. They might get themselves, let's say, 9 to 11 minutes time on ice in this one, and I say that mostly because Höglander and Ratu have not really been given all too much in the past few games. And even though it might not be ideal for some Canucks fans like me, who own Dakota Joshua in fantasy and want to see him go out there and score a hat trick in his return, ultimately you gotta recognize, hey, the guy's coming back from cancer. Like, we gotta label it out right here. He had cancer, he had surgery, so he could take as long as he wants to recover and eventually find himself somewhere in the top 9. If it were up to me personally, I would have not been opposed to trying out Joshua with Garland and Pettersson, for example, or potentially even try Joshua out with Bluger and Sherwood. Okay, no, that sounds ridiculous. Heinen, Bluger, Sherwood has been so good together. Yeah, we can't do that. Anyways, against an Islanders team that is admittedly not very good, we will hopefully see Joshua build up his momentum and build up his ice time as the game goes on. Like, maybe he gets 3 minutes in the first period and maybe up to 4 in the second, maybe 5 in the third. I don't really think the lines need to be shuffled around all too drastically today if the Canucks don't have any problems with the Islanders, but Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks have given Joshua their time. They've been very patient with him in order to allow him to fully get back up to speed, and it seems like today that's going to happen. Game 1 against the Islanders. Let's go, baby. The Vancouver Canucks played, what is that, 14 games without Joshua in the lineup? So if we assume, let's just go best case scenario here and assume that Dakota Joshua plays the rest of the season, he would have 68 games on the season, which is not bad. Definitely, you know, not a full season, but it's still good enough, I would say, to get a decent enough sample out of Joshua whilst he is on this new contract that he had signed. So this ultimately will be interesting to watch against a defensively minded and hard forechecking team like the Islanders. I want to see how physical Joshua can get. Please get me hits, man. I'm getting destroyed in my fantasy matchup this week. But also, in regards to Rick Tocchet, I wanted to talk about a very particular answer that Tocchet gave in an interview earlier this morning when speaking with Thomas Drance. Now, this was posted onto Twitter everywhere. Drance essentially goes out there and asks Tocchet about The way Jonathan Lekkerimaki was able to move and tango in his first NHL game, and he uses a very particular set of two former Canucks to make his point. Drans asks that we've seen with Kuzmenko or even Daniel Sprong recently, you can have all the offensive skill in the world, but playing for this team while you're the head coach, you have to hit a pretty high baseline level in terms of defensive play. Drans then asks Tocchet, do you have to modify those expectations when you're dealing with a younger guy like Lekkerimaki? And Drance has a really good way of bringing this up. I thought it was a great question. Tocchet then responds and says, look, I'm not going to touch on those other guys, but for Jonathan Lekkerimaki, Tocchet says that Lekkerimaki has a conscience there, and it was really interesting to hear him speak his thoughts about what made Lekkerimaki effective, not just as an offensive dude, but as a player away from the puck who was trying to get involved on the back check and be in the right spots in his own zone and make it so that the opponent's lives were much harder. And this entire conversation had been brought up on Canucks Twitter. I mean, we can just read the tweet here. I know Tocchet says he isn't talking about Sprong or Kuzmenko, but he is. Too long didn't watch, Lekkerimaki has a conscience. Tocchet has a tough time with players who are reload guys and are coming back slow, like when play goes the other way. He says, unless you score 60 goals, it's unacceptable. It's not something that he tolerates usually. And we have seen out of guys like Andrei Kuzmenko, like Daniel Sprong, who've had those issues in the past, ultimately get the boot from the Vancouver Canucks organization. They get traded quickly, they get benched quickly. Daniel Sprong got traded really quickly. But for Andrei Kuzmenko, hey, same thing kind of happened with him last year. Wasn't really all too great defensively. I will say, though, I think that Tocchet might not have given Kuzmenko too much of a chance, but at the same time, you can understand where he is coming from with all of that. Since really, Andrei Kuzmenko had his best season playing under Bruce Boudreau, who allowed him to do whatever he wants because Bruce Boudreau is a lot more of a player's coach. We've noted the differences between Bruce and Tocchet in the past, but seeing Andrei Kuzmenko, seeing Daniel Sprong go through the ringer, offensive guys who are not really known for their defense have problems succeeding under Rick Tocchet's system, it's very refreshing to see a guy like Lekkerimaki, who did only play one game, and he'll probably play a little bit more as the rest of the year continues, but a guy who has that skill, who has the hands, who has the shot, also committing himself to playing defensive hockey, and being in the coach's good graces because of it. There's an interesting sort of undertone there when Tocchet says that Lekkerimaki has conscience. He has a conscience to the way he plays. And in a way, he says that he's not talking about Sprong or Kuzmenko, but you could understand why he didn't say those same things about those two players. Does Kuzmenko have a conscience when he plays offensively? Yeah, sure. When he plays defensively, though, how about that? When Daniel Sprong doesn't have the puck, does he have a conscience to still stay involved in the play? I'm not really too sure. Now, for Lekkerimaki, it's been one game. We'll see him do more in the later games, but it's great that he has that foundation. You know, first impressions are very important, and ultimately, this is a situation where the Vancouver Canucks might have themselves a gem on their hands. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these Canucks news and notes from today. How Dakota Joshua is indeed back. How the Canucks are playing off against the Islanders. Kevin Lankinen is getting the start. Of course he is. And how Tocchet went out there and spoke in a pretty interesting way about Lekkerimaki, Kuzmenko, and Daniel Sprong. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.